Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast this evening. Our launch photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane, of course, have the evening off getting some rest since this is a West Coast venture. However, you can always keep up with their photography over on X. You can find Adam at ABurnNYC and Michael at MT Kane Jr. We are currently T minus 27 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting to the liftoff of the latest Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 4 East, or Slick 4E, there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. SpaceX is preparing to send up another 20 of its Starlink V2 mini satellites this evening. This will be the 112th launch of the V2 mini Starlink variety, the 49th dedicated Starlink launch so far this year alone. The booster supporting it all, tail number B1063 in the SpaceX fleet, is going to be flying for a 19th time if all goes well with tonight's countdown. Speaking of that countdown, SpaceX has confirmed that they are in propellant load right now. As far as the weather, standing at about 70% favorable, according to the company. And all systems on the Falcon 9 rocket are looking good, according to SpaceX. So, all things being equal, we are progressing well towards an on-time departure at the time you see there on your screen. Again, 7:35 p.m. Pacific, 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 02:35 UTC for our friends joining from around the world. And as we're kicking things off, go ahead and hop in the live chat. Let us know where you're joining us tonight. I know I've already seen some folks hopping in. Got Brenda F. joining from San Diego. Bobby, Texas, unsurprisingly joining us from Texas. Scott Cook down in New Brunswick, California. Richard in Lancaster. Good to see you all this evening. As you're joining us tonight, be sure to do us a favor and hit that like button. It allows more folks to find this live coverage as the YouTube algorithm will sense the engagement and it brings more friends in on the action. And subscribe to Spaceflight Now if you haven't already. And when you do, be sure to click the bell icon. That way you'll be notified the next time we start one of these live streams or post new videos to the channel. As a lot of folks are active here in the live chat, want to give a shout to our wonderful moderators helping us out tonight. Thanks to Callistia Lee, who's been in here for quite some time since the stream was published earlier today, and Stephanie B as well. Appreciate the two of you. Looks like Astro Joe is joining us tonight as well. Keep our eyes peeled for Astro Jen and Rusty Shackelford if they're popping in tonight to join in the fun. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Butterfly, John Torrance, Beverly Alton, Chat MTB, I'm Lita, Linda Moody, Cats in the House, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts to our online shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course, the ability to watch all the liftoff moments of our launches here in Florida in 4K. And want to thank Callistia Lee for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships, kicking us off on a good footing with some generosity. Thanks, Callistia. And a welcome to Lynn Shapiro and Fig816 joining us with channel membership as well. So to our newest 7 channel members, welcome aboard, and we're very glad to have you with us. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question and would like to be a part of our show, and your comment or question is appropriate to be read on the show, of course, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. We'll be monitoring that as well as looking for some good member comments here as we continue to roll merrily along. Currently T minus 22 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. Passed a couple of milestones here in the countdown timeline, but still have a number of them to go. So let's go ahead and kick things off and let's talk about what we're still anticipating over the next 23 minutes and some change. Of course, given that we are in prop load, the SpaceX launch director did give that go ahead at about the T minus 38-minute mark. Propellant load got underway a little more than 10 minutes ago with two events, those being the loading of RP1 or rocket grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and the loading of liquid oxygen began on the Falcon 9's first stage. The T minus 30-minute mark is when they started loading cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Similar process happening on the second stage at about the T minus 25-minute mark. About 40 seconds or so ago, the loading of second stage RP1 wrapped up. Looking ahead, the next milestone is coming up at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds. It's when the strong back chill down process begins. Of course, we are familiar with that as evidenced by the so-called big vent that is seen at about the 20-minute and 20-second mark. The process begins at the 20-minute, 50-second mark. They are thermally conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage LOX load, which comes up at T minus 16 minutes. T minus 7 minutes, the engine chill down sequence begins. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps and helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during that startup sequence. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. In T minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up. And then here at Vandenberg, the transporter erector of the strong back will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. A minute later, second stage LOX load is complete, at which point the Falcon 9 is loaded with about 1,000,000 pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And of course, if all 9 Merlin engines ignite and are healthy, the command will be issued for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Again, coming up in T minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds. Right at the time you see here on your screen, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 02:35 UTC. Now, just as a added note, of course, the launch window for today does extend out to 11:33 Pacific. However, because SpaceX has begun the propellant loading process, they are committing themselves to a launch attempt at the time you see listed here on your screen because they use a load and go style of fueling. The timeline we just finished talking about basically has them fueling practically to the point of liftoff. So they don't have the option to hold once fueling has begun. If for some reason they do encounter a snafu in the next 19 minutes, 20 seconds, they do have a backup window tomorrow, Friday, July 12th, beginning at 6:13 p.m. Eastern. Now T minus 18 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be heading once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Looking at a satellite view of Space Launch Complex 4 East, or Slick 4E, there at Vandenberg Space Force Base. In just about 18 minutes, when that Falcon 9 takes flight, it's going to be heading in a southeasterly trajectory. All those who've been with us for previous Starlink launches in recent months will be very familiar with this flight path. So for those in central to Southern California or Mexico, perhaps even as far as Arizona, maybe even Utah, go ahead and keep those cameras handy and keep your eyes to the west. Be sure to let us know if you're able to snap a picture of tonight's launch. Go ahead and tag us on X if you do. We're simply at Spaceflight Now. Following stage separation, that first stage booster 1063 will follow the orange path for a touchdown on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. If this is successful, this will mark the 96th landing of a booster on this particular drone ship and the 329th booster landing to date. Payload fairings will separate a little bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen. They gently float down to the waters of the Pacific Ocean, supported by parachutes. And as you can see from this slide from a SpaceX presentation earlier this year, they save about $6 million per recovery effort. So a very important part of their business model is to recover, refurbish, and reuse those payload fairings in addition to, of course, the first stage booster. This is an image of what it looks like when they're bringing those fairings on board one of their recovery vessels. SpaceX is in the process of certifying both its boosters as well as the payload fairings for up to 40 flights. So far, its most flown booster has 22 missions under its proverbial belt. We're T minus 15 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. At this point, the big vent will have wrapped up and second stage liquid oxygen load will be getting underway. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank Seabass for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that, Seabass, saying you guys are awesome. Appreciate the kind words. And I will go ahead and extend that out to our Spaceflight Now community here on YouTube because I think you guys are pretty awesome as well. And I also want to thank Los Sosos, DLBKH, for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate the support, Losos. T minus 13 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. Talked about where the Falcon 9 rocket is going. Let's talk about what is on board. Of course, as you can see there at the top of your screen, this is the Starlink 9-3 mission. On board are 20 Starlink satellites, 13 of which include the direct to cell phone capability. So far, SpaceX has launched a total of 103 of those DTC satellites so far, adding another 13 to that total at this point. The image on the left-hand side of your screen are what the Starlink V2 mini satellites look like stacked up in their launch configuration. Each of them clocks in at about 1,760 pounds or about 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering, as opposed to the previously used Krypton Hall thrusters. They were built in Redmond, Washington, and they'll be deployed at about 180 miles or 290 kilometers altitude at a 53-degree inclination. And while we don't have a good rendering from SpaceX of a V2 Mini and its on-orbit configuration, we do have this image from HEO Robotics, which specializes in basically non-Earth facing photography or imaging other satellites on orbit. And they captured this picture you see here of a V2 mini satellite. It was about the middle of last year, so coming up on a little more than a year ago now. They're now T minus 11 minutes and counting, just under 4 minutes away from the point in which the engine chill down sequence will begin. And as we are coming up on the cusp of sunset there in California, depending on what the cloud conditions are where you happen to be watching, if you're in the western part of the United States or in Mexico, where you might be able to catch a glimpse of the Falcon 9 rocket. If the lighting conditions are exactly right where you are, you may be able to capture something like this image from one of our recent launches as Falcon 9 was seen cruising over San Diego, as captured by Skyhawk. So if you are able to capture a glimpse of the Falcon 9 again, go ahead and tag us on X, formerly known as Twitter. Love to see what you get. And as I mentioned, this will be the 19th time that this particular first stage booster is flying. Let's go ahead and talk about the flight history of this booster. While we still have a few minutes before we get our eyes on it ourselves. Its first flight came back on November 21st of 2020. That was the launch of the Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich, or the Sentinel-6A, a radio altimeter satellite. That was followed up by its first Starlink mission, L-28, on May 21st, or excuse me, May 26th of 2021. Then a pretty nifty mission for NASA, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, simply known as DART. NASA's endeavor to see if we could change the trajectory of another celestial body, in particular an asteroid. Our first real big planetary defense mission that was proved successful. And more is being learned about it all the time. And in fact, the European Space Agency is going to be launching a follow-up mission called Hera to go examine the aftermath of DART and get a close-up viewpoint of exactly what kind of impact DART made. It's launching, I believe, in the October timeframe if that mission stays on course. Next up are a series of Starlink satellite missions. We had Starlink 4-1 on February 25th, 4-13 on May 14th, 3-1 on July 11th, 3-4 on August 31st, 4-31 on October 28th, 2-5 on February 17th. Changing pace here, we had a rideshare mission on April 15th of 2023. That was Transporter 7, followed up by a smaller but still combo rideshare mission between the Iridium Next 9 satellite and a couple of additional satellites from the OneWeb constellation. I was followed up going back to Starlink land after that for one mission, 5-13 on July 7th. That was followed up by a launch for the Space Development Agency, Tranche 0 Flight 2 demonstration mission. And that was followed up going back into Starlink land, Starlink 7-4 on October 9th, 7-7 on November 20th, 7-11 on January 24th, 7-17 on March 11th, and of course, most recently, Starlink 8-7 on May 14th. We're now T-minus 6 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. About 40 seconds into that engine chill down sequence. Taking a look at the live chat, appreciate the more than 15,000 of you who are joining with us live this evening. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us and allow some more folks to find their way into our live coverage. Take a look at the live chat. Want to thank a few folks for your support as we're getting ready to get our eyes on the rocket momentarily. Thanks to Bravo Actual for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Bravo. Aiden Green with a $14 super chat. Thank you, Aiden. Appreciate your support. Says, hey man, love your stuff. Post mainly motocross, but started getting into rocket stuff. I think it says Aiden's photography. Hope you can check it out. Appreciate it. Go ahead and take a look. Valentina Ortega with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Valentina. Cynthia Graves with a $5 super chat as well. Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate your support this evening. Carlo Montez with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Carlo. And SG joining us tonight, one of our wonderful channel members with a $5 super chat and a good luck corgi. Appreciate you, SG.
Tanks are pressing for Stromback retract.
And as you can hear, and I will generously say see, we are now getting the sights and sounds from the pad there at Vandenberg Space Force Base, and it is just about as Vandenberg of a launch as you can expect at this point. The lighting is such that you can see the sort of the silhouette of the Falcon 9 rocket and the strong back there, but not a whole heck of a lot else. And this vantage point, I imagine nominally this would be a pretty good viewpoint of the strong back retracting with the clamp arms opening up and transporter erector pulling away from the Falcon 9 rocket. And I will say, use your imagination. Guaranteed, though, that is what's happening right now. In this view, we may be able to see a little bit of movement as is about as good of a vantage point on the Falcon 9 as we've got right now. In about 45 seconds, we should hear the call that the first stage liquid oxygen tank is done filling.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And we heard that good call. Coming up next, the last big remaining fueling call out will be in about 40 seconds for the second stage LOX tank. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. As we're waiting for that call, I want to thank one of our wonderful channel members, I am Lita, for joining us tonight with a $5 super chat. Good to see you, Lita, who says, good to see you all again. Thanks, Spaceflight Now family, for the great coverage and ride along with fellow launch buddies.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds propellant. And you can slightly see it in this. Well, you could see it. But what you just heard, that ground gas closeouts, is what we were partially seeing for just a couple seconds. One minute out.
Falcon is in startup.
Last big call we're waiting to hear, of course, is the SpaceX launch director give their go for launch. That should be coming up momentarily.
LD is go for launch.
And with that, the Falcon 9 is ready and raring for a liftoff in just over 30 seconds. Let's go ahead and listen to the final countdown from SpaceX, and we'll be back with you on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX. Go forward.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
And a good liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Now a minute into flight, coming up on the point of max
Power and
Q,
telemetry nominal.
the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the
Max
vehicle.
Q.
You hear that call out? Also heard that the Falcon 9 was traveling faster than the speed of sound, of course, as you can see the telemetry data on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We're coming up on a few different events in fairly rapid succession here. First stage main engine cutoff at
MVAC chill
T
has
plus
started.
2 minutes, 25 seconds. That call that you just heard, they are thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine because a few seconds after MECO, there'll be stage separation. And then that upper stage engine, excuse me, will ignite for second stage engine starter SES1 at T plus 2 minutes and 35 seconds. The payload fairings will then be deployed just a little after the 3-minute mark.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
All good callouts, and see those 3 events happening back to back.
Fairing separation confirmed.
With those payload fairings now falling away, the Starlink satellites exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission, you can still see those fairings falling away just beyond the Merlin vacuum engine in this shot, which is pretty nifty. So now a little more than 4 minutes into flight. Coming up, the next event is in less than 2 minutes. That'll be the start of the first stage entry burn. The Falcon 9 first stage will begin to slam on the brakes and slow itself down in preparation for a landing on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. That burn will last about 26 seconds in total. Those who've been with us for a number of Falcon flights here, no doubt noticing a bit more frost buildup that we're seeing around the Merlin vacuum engine than typical. Not to say that that's necessarily problematic by any means, but just an interesting observation.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Again, this burn lasting about 26 seconds in total.
Stage 1, entry burn, shutdown.
Now, just about 7 minutes into flight, you can see the speed of the Falcon 9 first stage booster,
Stage 1
1063,
FTS is saved.
dropping rapidly. That call, the FTS, the flight termination system, has been saved as it is no longer needed for this stage in flight. We're coming up on the start of the landing burn, T plus 7
Stage
minutes and
1
49
transonic.
seconds, just
Stage
about 20
2
seconds
FTS
from
is
now.
saved. Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And as you can see in here, a good landing of 1063 on the drone ship, launching and landing for a 19th time.
And back shutdown.
At this point in the Falcon flight, the upper stage will go into a coast phase where nominally in 50 at the T plus 52 minute 20-second mark, there will be a brief 1 second burn of that Merlin vacuum engine. And then the Starlink satellites are scheduled to be deployed at T plus 59 minutes and 14 seconds. And as SpaceX noted on X, this was their 70th Falcon mission of the year. 70 in the Falcon family, so that includes 69 Falcon 9 launches and 1 Falcon Heavy flight. Noting that for posterity before we go ahead and turn to our look at our mission stats. But before we do, I want to thank just a few more folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Seeing Eye Frog for a $10 super chat. That's coming in before liftoff, saying just send that rocket up, basically. Eat that rocket. Uh, Dylan with a $2 super chat. Appreciate you, Dylan. asking about the camera views, and those are had cameras from SpaceX. Christopher Cooper with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Christopher. Apocalypse Cow gifting 5 Spacefly Now memberships. Thanks, Apocalypse Cow, and welcome aboard to our 5 newest channel members. Be sure to thank Apocalypse if you haven't already in the live chat. Monkey Tree Rob sending some love to Mandy this evening. Cole Cunningham, one of our wonderful channel members, with a $2 super chat. Good to see you this Cole. Good to see you this evening, Cole, I should say. And I'm doing pretty well. Hope you're doing all right as well. RPM for years with a $5 super chat. Said he was launched or said they were launching their drone to follow the launch from SoCal. So you'll have to let us know, RPM, how that turned out. Hopefully you were able to escape some of the fog in the area. Monkey Tree Rob with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Monkey Tree. And Kath Lud one with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Kath. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the mission stats as they currently stand with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, marking flight number 19 for B-1063. This was the 354th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 69th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. And as we were just talking about, that makes this the 70th SpaceX orbital launch of 2024 as well. This was SpaceX's 120th orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 84th orbital launch from Slick 4 East at Vandenberg, 152nd overall orbital launch from that pad as well. This marks the 24th orbital launch from Vandenberg this year, practically catching up to the total from all of 2023. Three of those launches have been SpaceX missions. In addition, there was also the recent Noise of Summer launch from Firefly Aerospace and their Alpha rocket. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 96th landing of a booster on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. This was SpaceX's 258th drone ship landing and the 329th Falcon booster landing to date. Finally, some industry stats. This was, of course, the 24th orbital launch from California, the 74th orbital launch from U.S. soil, 82nd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 133rd orbital launch from around the world. Taking a look at the pie chart here, U.S. with those 82 missions still holding about 62% of the pie. China with about a quarter of the missions so far this year, although they did have another launch failure yesterday. Russia has launched 8 times so far, Japan with 4 and a mishap there as well. Iran and India with 2 launches apiece, North Korea with 1 failed launch so far. And one of the newest to join this pie, of course, is the European Space Agency and Arianespace with the launch of the Ariane 6 rocket that just happened earlier this week. If you weren't able to be with us for our live launch coverage, we had a great deal of fun being joined by our friend Frederick. So go ahead and watch that replay if you like to catch up on what was a great conversation and live coverage. Frederick is a font of knowledge, so we were very fortunate to be joined by him on that stream. So that is up on our channel right now to go ahead and check out. And for those who want to head in this weekend with your eyes on the next rocket launch, of course, we're tracking the Starlink 10-4 mission, which is set to launch over the weekend from here in Florida. Looking at that for no earlier than July 14th. So set your alarms and join us in the wee hours of Sunday morning. Although for those in California, it'll be just a little bit after midnight, about 12:35 or so. All goes well with the flight time there. So not too terribly late for those night owls, but somewhat painfully early for us here on the East Coast. But we will soldier on as we always do. couple more folks to thank. Just wrapping things up here. Welcome aboard to Norman Aben joining us at the pad leader level. Welcome, Norman. Glad to have you with us. John Moran with a $10 super chat. Thank you, John. RPM letting us know that no luck on the drone, but the one for a few weeks ago is on his page, so folks can check that out there. And Zook Zipper with a $5 super chat saying, thank you for letting me a part of another important step in human advancement. We're glad to have you with us, Duke, and for everyone who's able to join us for our live launch coverage. And we hope to see many of you back here again when next we cover the next launch. So for our editor, Stephen Young, and for our moderators in the live chat, Callistia Lee, Stephanie B., Astro Joe, Astro Jen, Rusty Shackelford. All of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.